I don't think so. I'd ever imagined myself in marketing. Like you rightly said, right? GCC is very diverse. We did a consumer immersion and we actually found out that men in Saudi prefer to shop themselves.
All right.
And so do the women. Women are like, we don't buy for men and we don't even know what they want to buy or what they like to buy.
Each one his own.
Yes, I think Stylee is not really trying to replicate the physical retail online. They are really trying to build something around the customer with a digital first sort of point of view.
Are Gen Zs and the digital natives an easy audience to target?
No.
Hey everyone, welcome to season 2 of the Marketing Bites, and I'm your host G. So, as you know, this season we are doing something a little different. We are talking to women who are shaping the future of marketing in the Middle East. They are leading teams, making real decisions, and navigating high pressure environments. Today, I have someone who has seen almost every side of the industry, from luxury retail to fast moving e commerce. She started her career in accounting and assurance, moved through agencies, and now leads digital marketing at Stylee. I'm super thrilled to have Vishaka Mehra in the hot seat today. Hey Vishaka, I'm so happy you're here and welcome to the Marketing Bites.
Thank you, Gitanjali. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, you spent most of your career maneuvering very numbers led, performance driven, high pressure environments. I mean, these are areas where decisions are made very fast, the expectations are very high,
Yeah.
and the room can feel pretty intense. So, in areas like these, what do you think women naturally bring to the room that often gets unnoticed?
In rooms like these, right? Everybody wants quick responses, the volumes go up, there are louder opinions. Women in such cases lead with awareness. They're able to just take that pause, evaluate the room. They're able to sense or hear what's not being said. Such kind of sensitivity is usually dismissed to be softness. But I personally think it's actually a strategic advantage, right? Because if you are taking a rushed decision does not necessarily mean it's the right decision.
Absolutely.
I think taking that pause and giving it that moment of thought and really evaluating that is the team pushing for this out of fear or really out of clarity. And that genuinely, I think, difference or rather that sensitivity that the women bring in is a really big advantage.
So building on this, this is something that even I've noticed that happens to me. You know, as women in leadership roles, there's always this quiet checking in that we are doing with ourselves. You know, am I being too soft? Am I being too firm? How are my decisions being perceived? Am I being taken seriously for it? So how does this entire thing feel familiar to you? And if yes, how do you go about dealing with it and creating a balance around it?
100%, very very familiar, especially now when you say these things. It's like a constant calibration that's happening internally. Did I say this right? Was I saying it the right
Yeah.
way? Did this person think a certain way about me? And especially in the early times of my leadership journey, I think I was really going through this. But eventually what I realized, it's not really about the tone that I'm speaking in. It's more like I was looking for some sort of a validation or approval,
Yeah.
which tends to happen with women a lot. I think that perception had to be changed when I just had to clearly understand that just the fact that I'm being stern or firm does not mean that I lack empathy.
Absolutely.
And I can still, hold someone with compassion, but also hold them accountable, and, give them clear objectives, and have them turn around in time accordingly. And I think over time you also get taken seriously as a leader when you're able to do this very well.
Absolutely. Do you think the world is ready to have women in marketing or women in leadership roles?
Honestly, they're not ready.
So, Vishakha, let's go back to the beginning for a moment. You know, you started your career in accounting and assurance with Ernst and Young, which is a complete contrast to what you're doing today.
Yeah.
Back then, did you ever imagine that you would end up in marketing, or did that path just shape itself as you moved along your career?
Yeah, I don't think so. I had ever imagined myself in marketing. I was pretty set that this is what my path is,
Yeah.
and this is what I'm going to do. But I think I'm glad that very early on I realized that that's not going my way. But it was also not as simple as, okay, now I'm going to get up and start doing marketing, right? Like, I didn't even know what marketing is. There's also digital, there's advertising, there's client servicing. So when you go to someone and say, I want to do marketing, they're going to be like, what is it that you want to do within marketing? So I think that clarity, obviously, I didn't have. And over time, that shaped and I was able to figure out. And performance marketing was the good entry point, because I think that analytical balance of, EY
Yeah.
and marketing was
Yeah.
a very good fit, and it just worked out very well.
So your numbers led background was really, the starting point for you to get into marketing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As you spent more time working inside businesses, did you notice yourself getting drawn towards a certain part of your work, something that attracted you about marketing, say, customers, brands, the way customers are doing their buying decisions, which was completely different from, or rather beyond the numbers that you were dealing with? How did that happen?
There are two aspects of this. One of them happened early on when I went to do my master's, and I discovered something called digital business, which was a specialization that the university was offering. And that really opened my eyes in terms of, how the world is sort of digitalizing. And we were just about the cusp of things around that time, which is somewhere in 2016, where digitalization had just started in the Middle East, right? You see government, sort of moving there, and then eventually everyone else taking the same route. And that is what really, drew me towards marketing. And digital marketing was one of the modules within the digital business and
Right.
transformation.
Right.
But just seeing how businesses are adapting, and that's something that's really exciting, because it's not something that someone could have taught you some time back. It's just happening now, and you're sort of learning on the
Learning
go,
on the
right?
go. Yeah, it's a learning curve.
Yeah, so that was definitely a turning point for me, and that's when I took that decision that, this is what I want to be doing next.
Yeah.
I want to get into, anything digital related. This is one aspect of things, but the second aspect, I think, in terms of perspective, like you rightly said about customers or just having an overall picture,
Yeah.
happened when I moved from the agency side towards the brand side.
Okay.
So when I moved on to the brand side, I think it really opened my eyes that how is it that we really put the customer on the core, and really think that this offer will work for this customer. This is why we should do it at this time of the month. It should happen on this specific category. Like, there's so much nuances to such kind of promotions that are being run, which on the agency side, you really don't get that perspective, right? You are literally just being told, here is your media budget, and you sort of take things from here. But to really understand that what led to the point of me even being given this much of media budget really brought in that perspective and opened my eyes.
Looking back now, how do you feel about having worked in a very structured, numbers first environment has really shaped the way you think and work as a marketer today?
I would give all the credit to, Excel in my life. And EY was great at,
Yeah.
Teaching me that. Having that analytical mindset really helps you read through the lines. You're able to pick minute details and have that attention to detail. In accounting, it's a little mundane in terms of what you're doing, but if you apply the same sort of, foundation into performance marketing, you can really pick so many different trends and make sense out of your data.
Your career in accounting and assurance has really taken you one step ahead to understanding marketing and rather performance marketing in a way, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
100%.
All right. I want to get into understanding a little bit more about consumer behavior and marketing across the GCC that you're doing on a daily basis in your work life. I keep noticing this in my work as well. People behave, or other consumers behave rather differently across the GCC. There's some people who are shopping for luxury online, then there's the rest who are, browsing fashion websites in their free time. And then you have the price conscious audience that are really checking prices before they can commit. When you see all of this as, up close and personal, and rather put it all together, what do you think really drives the way in which people are making their buying decisions?
Like you rightly said, right? GCC is very diverse. It's all part of one big union, but at the end of the day, a person in Saudi behaves very differently from a person in UAE, and so on and so forth. The luxury shopper in Kuwait is not necessarily going to be limited to just buying luxury. They're also okay to, exploring other brands as long as they find it to be trendy. But maybe a person in Saudi is looking at price. Crux of everything eventually remains to be trust. I think if a brand or any kind of a business is able to get that trust of the customer, and build up on that, I think eventually, even if you are a customer, you will think, I'm going to be putting my money into buying this.
Yeah.
You know, will it deliver on time? What kind of quality will it have? Will I be able to return? Like,
Yeah.
you yourself will do a bit of, analysis around the business before you make that decision.
So, when I was starting out, I had a lot of assumptions about the GCC consumers, which eventually got challenged when I began to analyze data on a daily basis. Has something like this happened with you as well?
It did happen very recently, actually. But just for a bit of background, I personally was perceiving, and was also told by a lot of people, that it's the women in Saudi that actually shop for the men and for the
Okay.
kids and for the rest of their families. And that's when, when you're doing your targeting, or when you are sort of setting your campaign strategy, you keep women as the core of your audience, and you think that, okay, I need to plan around it because that's the one who's shopping, right? But then very recently we did a consumer immersion, and we actually found out that men in Saudi prefer to shop themselves.
All right.
And so do the women. Women are like, we don't buy for men, and we don't even know what they want to buy or what they like to buy.
Each one his own.
Yes.
You're so close to performance data, you actually get to see behavior play out in real time. There's people clicking, dropping off, coming back later. Is there a specific pattern that you've noticed in people's buying behaviors when such a thing happens?
It's not a straight line, right? When somebody's trying to convert or shop, there's so many thought process that come through. They'll first engage with your ad, or they'll discover you, they'll come back again, they'll drop off, they'll maybe get opinion from somebody else, they'll then see an influencer ad, and then eventually click on some very random thing and then eventually convert, right? So there's no straight line to conversion. With the data, obviously it's something that we track very closely, and we're able to identify shopping patterns. But at the end of the day, something that will really not be readable on the data is, again, something that we found out through the consumer immersion, is that people look for validation even with their purchases, right? They'll ask family, friends, even WhatsApp groups, and that shows in things like, repeat traffic.
Yeah.
Or you could see them, the number of shares or wish lists they're having, how they're engaging with the product, not necessarily in terms of conversion metrics, but in other metrics, engagement metrics.
So, Vishaka, let's shift focus to two very interesting topics, namely data and storytelling. Now, every brand today says that it has a story to tell, but when you actually start scrolling, some of the digital ads barely register. From your experience of working in fast moving categories like fashion, what actually makes a performance ad land and feel worth someone's attention?
In today's time, when the registering power is so small,
Yeah.
I feel like you really need to grab that attention within the first 2 seconds, right? And if you're able to do it, great, they'll hold on and they'll stay. And honestly, I feel like how so far we've been able to crack this is through identifying social trends. Social media trends are big, everyone is watching reels, TikToks, even YouTube shorts now is huge, right? And if you're able to catch on to a trend which is trending right now, I think you'll automatically grab attention. While the branding team does look forward to doing storytelling through the main media campaigns, there always has to be an aspect which has to be a social first sort of a concept,
Mhm.
which can then run on these social media channels.
Yeah.
One of the examples I can actually give you, so our winter campaign at Stylee was shot in 7 different cuts.
Wow. Okay.
And it was quite interesting. So it's about the whole storytelling of camping, because camping is very big in the region in the winter.
Yeah.
So it's camping, but it's different phases of camping. And it was shot in 7 ways, and it also ran as small reels, in seven segments,
Yeah.
through the different times of the month of the winter, starting like, from November end all the way till now.
So different phases of winter,
Yes.
yeah?
Phases of winter with phases of camping. So it's quite
Okay.
interesting.
Wow, that's nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like an interesting campaign.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm a little curious about this, if a campaign isn't clicking and the pressure starts to mount in, how do you handle a situation like that? Does your instinct tell you to dive straight into the data, or do you take a step back and then reassess the bigger picture?
Yeah, I think this is where your women is coming in, right? You take that step back.
Absolutely.
I think it's very important, because again, you'll take that decision so quickly thinking, oh my God, it's not working. I need to,
Yeah.
fix this right away. But what really helps here is frameworks in the sense that have benchmarks, right? If my campaign is supposed to deliver a certain way, know that okay, this is the kind of CTRs it should be hitting, maybe these kind of conversion rates I should be getting. And you can, have these trends from your back, data all the way back, whatever data that you have available, and use that benchmark and framework to really decide, is this actually working for me or not? And then take that call. But it doesn't need to instantly be like, okay, it's day one and it's not working, so let's turn it off, right? Give it also a fair amount of time to really judge whether it's working.
So, with trends moving so quickly and things changing rapidly on a weekly basis, how do you really personally use data and performance signals to decide what's worth scaling and what really needs to be pushed back without losing sight of the brand?
I think not every aspect of the campaign needs to be evaluated with so much of a magnifying glass. Some things can be on autoplay. So just from a performance marketing point of view, your remarketing campaigns are not something you're going to keep touching all the time, right? That's pretty much on your auto on now. And where you're going to sort of iterate is, how do I get that traffic in? How do I actually get them to come in as a new customer, rather acquire a customer, right?
Yeah.
I think retargeting from a performance marketing point of view can be always on, but acquisition is where you have room to sort of test and play around with. And that's where I would look at the data and really with a magnifying glass rather, and be like, yeah, this is working and this is not working, let's change things fast, because I don't want to be spending money when it's not working out for me, right? But I wouldn't do this in every aspect.
You would do it where it's required. So I want to talk about Styly for a bit because this seems like a very interesting place to be building right now. We're talking about a brand that was born online, especially in a region where the mall culture and the physical store culture is so strong. What has been the most exciting part of this journey for you?
I love this question. Tylee is not really trying to replicate the physical retail online. They are really trying to build something around the customer with a digital first sort of point of view. And I think what's really beautiful is that we're able to see everything, right? Because of the data, we're able to see the hesitation in the customer, we're able to see the repeat visits, we're able to see, if they are returning something, if they are liking something, the loyalty, and we're able to see everything real time.
Yeah.
Which is something that is not possible so much in a physical scenario, right? And that's what is super exciting, and I would say is the edge that Styly has.
I was coming to that. If you really had to pick one aspect of this job that you're into, which one would it be? That most one exciting part that you really enjoy?
What I really, really enjoy is every day is different. It's never like I'd come back and I'm doing the same thing, right? Like there's always something new to look forward to. The data is changing, so you're adapting basis that. Okay, we got to open a new market. What are we going to do? What's the strategy? What can we test? What can we, learn?
So once you're inside the business, you stop looking at customers as one audience. You're basically looking at them as more of, very real and personal interactions. And a lot of these conversations have now started to happen on platforms like WhatsApp, which for some people is still very personal. So how does that really change the dynamics for you?
Yeah, I think WhatsApp coming into the picture really changed the game for CRM, right? Like, I think it's super personal and you don't want noise in a situation like this. I think the strategy gets altered a bit around WhatsApp. You are not trying to be very frequent here. You're just trying to be there at the right time with the right tone,
Yeah.
with the right kind of messaging. WhatsApp is not just another broadcast channel for you, right? It's just, how do I make this conversation more and more personal, because the channel itself is so personal to the customer. Personal messaging is here to stay, and it is the next phase of CRM.
Right. So when you're talking about the communication and CRM working hand in hand, do you feel that it makes the brand feel more human, or does it have its own set of challenges?
It's an opportunity rather for the brand to feel human, right? Wherein you can just push promotions and offers, but after some point you can't hide behind that, right? Like, you need to have something that's making your customer come back to you, and that can only happen when you're able to be that bring that human aspect of things in terms of conversations. And how I do this on an automation level is, okay, Gitanjali bought shoes from Styly. Maybe I show, either try and show her the same sort of shoes saying, okay, here there's 60% discount shop.
Yeah.
Or I can actually tell her, you know what, you bought these New Balance sneakers, they go really well with this, t-shirt and jeans look, which this influencer was wearing. So,
You're
maybe
going
that's
one
something.
step above that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's where you sort of frame your conversations and make it more and more relatable and human, and that's how it'll work.
Right, right. Are Gen Zs and the digital natives an easy audience to target?
Uh, no. I think they're definitely not easy to target, but they are. What you should also understand is they are very, very knowledgeable. You cannot
Exactly, that
just
was my question,
yeah,
yeah.
you cannot just take them to be like, okay, we can sort of fool them.
Yeah.
You cannot do that.
They're very
know.
aware.
They are very aware. They are
Yeah.
so much more, I would say, grounded. They are looking for sustainability, even in things like fashion. And fast fashion is very fast moving and trend oriented, but they are not catching on to that trend. They are like, no, we want to build a neutral, wardrobe which can be paired with different things, and we want it to be sustainable. We want good quality.
In a digital first setup, nothing remains hidden. Everything is out there, visible to you. You've got your performance, your returns, your drop offs, even feedback in most cases. Does that level of immediacy push you to be more honest in actually making your marketing related decisions?
Any kind of digital marketing now is completely trackable, so you cannot fluff around this. You will get caught eventually. So yes, I think you have to be 100% honest, and you cannot be very emotional with your decisions that, this is what I think is right. At the end of the day, the data is going to speak for itself, so you will know if it's right or
Yeah,
not.
absolutely.
So yes, I would say you have to be honest, and you have to learn to adapt and be agile also, that if it's not working, I have to pivot my direction. I have to think of a different strategy.
Different strategy, because I think the audience and data are really responding in real time these days. So like you're saying, there's no fluff around it. You
Yeah.
have to be real.
Yeah, and we're tracking data not just on a daily. You can see things on hourly basis as well now, right? Like, immediately if something is working or not, and to be able to take that decision and be quick. I can give you an example of this actually. So Kuwait as a market loves free deliveries. Okay.
Who doesn't?
Yes, but they don't care about the price or the discount. They just care about free deliveries.
All
Right. And in a market like that, there was an introduction of a delivery fee just because of cross borders, etc. It was a business decision that was taken. But literally within the next hour, like, we took it live, and the next hour you see the conversions like just taking a hit, right? Like, you can see how
Wow.
immediately they are reacting.
Yeah.
And then you don't even have to wait till the next day to change. You can literally change it.
It's
the same
everything
day.
is in real time.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it actually helps you change your decisions and even adapt and be a little, you can tweak your decisions, you can
Yes.
tweak your strategy.
Yeah.
Right. So you're also speaking to an audience now which are extremely aware, and I'm talking about the Gen Z and the digital natives. Now, these are people that grew up to algorithms, content, even ads. So they are very aware in the sense that they know when they are being sold to, they know when they are being marketed to, and they don't really have much patience for it.
Yeah.
But in a situation like this or in an environment like this, how do you stay relevant and still earn trust without constantly having to lean on discounts and promotions?
What you rightly said, it's all in the face and you cannot avoid it. Algorithms are able to pick on and show you our competitors and us at the same time with the same product and the same price. So,
Yeah.
like, how is it that I'm winning in this situation as compared to everybody else? And I think one of the main factors for me as well, I'm not just thinking from a digital native or a Gen Z point of view, is I think to be able to provide genuine products. I don't want to be having a bad experience after I purchase the product and then not have them come back or say
Yeah.
something bad about me to somebody else, right? And that's how the word of mouth factor comes into play. And how am I going to establish that I am a genuine brand or I'm a genuine product? And I think leveraging content creators and influencers in this market, which is very, very relevant in this market. Like, people love their influencers, right? They are genuinely following them for trends, for discovery. They are finding out. It's not just coupon codes. Like, coupon codes is one aspect of things of it, but it's more like, okay, I like the way this influencer is dressing.
Their
what she's-
authenticity is very
Yes.
important.
If style is able to come into that position, and then content creators are able to create relatable content, that this is how I'm looking wearing a styly product, or this is what I bought from styly, and this is how it's looking on me. I think that really helps bring that genuinity factor, and it's able to
Yeah.
build that trust as well.
So I want to spend some time talking about customer loyalty, your CRMs, which is your customer relationship management, customer acquisition, and then customer retention, which I think are very vital to any business, be it an online or an offline business. But now I want to focus solely on customer loyalty because I've really gone back and forth on it on a personal level. In so many of our roles, I feel that we get awarded or rather rewarded for acquisition, your ROAS, dashboards, and even quick wins sometimes. So, and I've also noticed one thing that loyalty often becomes important when growth starts to wobble. So, in your experience working in a digital first world or a digital first environment, what do you think brands really misunderstand about loyalty?
I think the first misunderstanding is something that you rightly pointed out, is that it's an afterthought. It's okay, my acquisition is expensive and my growth is wobbling, so let's bring in retention, right?
Yeah.
I think that is the misunderstanding in the first place. Like, they go hand in hand. It cannot be an afterthought. It has to start from the very beginning, because acquiring a customer, I would still say, relatively is easier. It's where you want to build loyalty, that I don't have to pay money to get them to come back. They're going to come back themselves,
Yeah.
right? And that needs to happen from day one.
Mm.
And that is the biggest misunderstanding in a digital first world. I think loyalty is key, because there's so many competitors. How do you get them to come back? And that'll only happen when you're able to, remove that decision fatigue for them, that you've become so accessible and so easy to engage with. You have the right things, they're very familiar with you, so they don't even have to click on an ad. They'll directly come to your app and search for you, right? Like, I think that'll only come once that loyalty is built, and that loyalty is built with a lot of different, touch points through the customer journey. And once you're able to achieve that, they will not just come back to you because you're cheaper. I think price will become secondary at that point. Like,
Absolutely.
you'll just be like, yeah, okay, this is where I find my spot. I had a great experience the last time, or the last couple of times.
Yeah.
So I'm indifferent. I'm not going to be going through and searching many things. I'm just directly going to go into the app and look if they have it or not.
Right, right. So, in a performance driven ecosystem where customers are constantly getting retargeted and reacquired, how does loyalty actually survive?
Retargeting and reacquiring is one aspect of thing, or rather one of the most common ways that one measures loyalty. Like, you're also thinking, you're thinking, okay, if this person's coming repeatedly, maybe they're using certain loyalty points. That's how loyalty is being built. But I think loyalty is a step beyond that, right? Like, they are returning without any trigger points. They are not returning, or rather,
Yeah.
they are able to now come back without having to think that, okay, this is cheaper in that platform, or this platform are doing many checkpoints and then coming back. I think they're just coming back now out of habit, and that will only come because of loyalty, right?
Yeah.
And these are things that you don't necessarily measure. um, and of course, repeat purchase is one of the biggest aspects of loyalty, but it's not the only way that you would measure it. And I think that's one of the key differences.
So, in a situation like this, Vishakha, what allows a customer to stay loyal to a brand, especially when every brand is literally competing for attention, for the customer's attention at every step?
I think there are two aspects to this. One is how relatable the brand is, how easily it's able to understand my requirement. And second is the convenience bit of it as well. That, is it able to deliver to me on time? And is it able to get to me when I really need this specific product? And the relatable aspect of things is, for example, I'm looking for a particular, a product in a certain quality or a texture. It might be available in different platforms at different prices, but okay, this one platform is able to give it to me in within the same day. Like,
Hassle free.
hassle free, and also it's easier for me. I saw the product, I clicked on it, the journey from there on is smooth. I'm not
Yeah.
having any frictions there. I think those kind of things also play a big role, and is a pivoting factor in this case.
Right. And even the part where how you receive the package.
Yes, and also
Yes.
how you receive the package. That's the step, after, because
Yeah.
that's only after the order is placed.
Yeah.
And you'll remember it, that this package came to me in a certain condition and how it was delivered. I think those kind of things also play a role, but that would be the second aspect of things.
Right. But that also will help the customer stay with you, right? Stay
Yes.
with your brand.
Yes.
It's basically all about retention as well.
Yes, and it's also how the brand is then eventually perceived to be.
Perceived.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, what's helped you keep conversations anchored in a long term value and customer retention programs, especially when you know that these results are going to take time?
Yeah, I think it's a long term game, of course, and everybody wants quick answers. But what's very important is to set that expectation right. That if I'm looking at a certain metric now, I also need to evaluate again in day 7, day 14, day 28, a year from now, what is the customer lifetime value at the end of the day? You've acquired, great. You got them at a cheap price, amazing.
Yeah.
Are they staying with you?
That's, yeah.
That's the biggest question, right? So one of the things that it was an exercise that we just did because November just went by and November is a big month in e-commerce. It's an evaluation that we did to estimate that how many people actually came back and purchased after November within the next 1 year. So it was a working that we did for the previous month, and it actually turned out that a lot of the people that actually come in November don't end up sticking with you because at that point in time they are only looking for discount. They are not really there to, I'm going to buy only from Stylee or Trendyol or Namshi or
They are not
60.
really your loyal customers.
They are not your loyal. But at the same time, a customer acquired during Ramadan will stick with you for a longer time.
Why is that, if I may cut you across here? You mentioned that the customers that come in for maybe a Christmas or a New Year discount may not come back to you, but a customer that is shopping during Ramadan would.
I think it's due to the nature of the season as well, in the sense that Ramadan is a very, it's a very emotional month as well. It's not just the purchase has an intent driven behind it, right? They are buying something because they want to look a certain way for the month, the holy month of Ramadan. And I think a lot of the purchases that happen are very intentional in that month. So I think when they are looking for something, they're not necessarily looking for the best deal. They are really looking for quality product and that trust building with the brand. So
Okay.
in a month like that, when you're able to acquire someone where you're not running so many promotions, right? You are really banking on your product to do the job for you, and you're able to acquire and they have a good experience, they actually end up sticking for longer and they're not there for the discounts.
So, Vishakha, with a lot of heavy lifting that you have to do on a daily basis in your role as a digital marketer with Stylee, I've also noticed this thing about you that you've really shifted into an area where data has now become narrative for you. Clicks have become, or rather, converted into connections, and tools have turned into technology and people, which is literally talking about thinking beyond numbers. So from the outside, your role really looks very glamorous. It's a lot about launches, about big numbers, about growth, about fun campaigns. But I'm sure that when you actually think about your actual work day, there must be some aspect of it which quietly takes up a lot of your mental space. Which one is that? Sir?
It's definitely all the fun things that you mentioned.
Yeah.
It is a lot of that, and I really enjoy that. But something that I deliberately make time to do within my daily work routine, which can easily kind of get missed, is what can I test next? Because you get so used to a certain setup and you're just doing campaigns in a certain way. And there's so many activations happening, branding is happening, a new campaign is launching, market is launching. But in between all this, like, where can I experiment? Because that's how I'll learn. For me to constantly evolve and have push my team as well, I have to always think that what is it that I can do differently today, even if it's a small thing, like let's change a little bit on the creative and see, how does this work on Instagram. You see these frames around the products now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so those frames we were testing for a long time with a very static call out which would just say, okay, whatever discount or everything. And then we said, okay, let's tweak this a little bit, let's try something else, let's just only put the brand name and see what happens. And we did this for our beauty products in Kuwait.
Okay.
And Kuwait being a beauty first market, it clicks so well. I think it was one of the best, in terms of click through rate. But it was something, it's just you had to iterate, you had to think of it.
Does stress affect you in any way? Because we're talking about this quiet mental space, which where you have all the fun things on one side, but there's also a lot of pressure, work-related pressure. So how do you deal with that?
I think I've learned to work myself around it over time. Initially, yes, I'd get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But then you learn to cope with it. I think And now stress is, I wouldn't say it's so stressful. Because I enjoy it. I think because I enjoy going through this whole hustle and, to be able to look into things and just figure out what may or may not be working, it excites me. So it's not really very stressful. And also, I think the environment that you're in kind of plays a role here. Are they making it very stressful for you or not?
AI is everywhere in marketing. It is being used in your predictions, your optimization, your dashboards, even.
Yes.
How do you personally decide what to trust, what to test, and what still needs human judgment?
I think AI is a little bit of a, it's still a gray area, I would say. It's,
Okay.
it's fun. It's also scary. You feel like it's threatening your job in some way, but really it's that tool that's enabling you to do so much better. And in certain cases, it's already a part of your day to day. You don't even realize it, right? Like, for example, the campaigns on performance marketing, most of the channels now have AI enabled
Absolutely.
campaigns.
It's here to
So,
stay.
and it's here to
Yeah,
stay. They
yeah.
are actually eliminating you to, have a lot of iterations into the campaign structures because they want AI to work and, deliver in a certain manner. But that being said, that does not necessarily mean that it'll work.
Yeah.
You do need that human intervention to see that, is this working the way I expect it to work? Of course, AI is supposed to amplify things for you, but at the same time, if it's not working, it's not working. You're not going to push it specifically just because, it's AI.
Just because it's there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that kind of iterations is definitely needed. But I also love AI where it's making data so much simplified and easier to read. So from a CRM point of view, we look at something called RFM segments, which is
Yeah.
basically recency and frequency. So like how recently are you coming? How frequently are you coming?
Okay.
And earlier, these are the segments that you would have to sort of, manually kind of make. And AI has sort of made this so much more smoother and cleaner that now you're able to just pick these segments and do so much more experimentations with it,
Yeah.
which maybe, earlier that time would just go into finding the right segment and doing the kind of experimentation that you want around it. So it's here to stay. It's more like how do you mold your way around it and how do you use it to its best use
To its
case.
best. It's also a time saver.
And 100%.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Oof. This has been an intense conversation. Time to loosen things up a little. What we are going to do now is play sip or spill, and I call it the vitamin sip or spill because your sip today is a vitamin water shot. So here's the deal. I ask you a question, you either spill the beans, tell me the truth, or just take a water shot, a sip, and say nothing at all. So no explanations needed.
Okay.
Are we ready?
Yes.
All right, first one. Have you ever nodded confidently in a meeting while internally thinking, I have no idea what they're talking about?
I think that's all of us, right? Yes, I would say yes.
All right, okay. Who do you find harder to please? A luxury shopper walking into Bloomingdale's or a Gen Z shopper scrolling styly at 1 a.m.?
Both are equally challenging, but I would say the Gen Z is definitely harder to get there.
I agree with you on that. Have you ever pitched an idea in a meeting and halfway through regretted it?
I'm going to take a shot for this one. I don't want to be saying things.
What's one metric people obsess over that you personally take with a pinch of salt?
I would say it's the CTR, click-through rate.
Click-through rate.
It's a good way to identify if something is engaging or hitting or not.
Yeah.
But in today's time and generation where, the attention span is so small, I think click is not the most ideal metric. If somebody's just viewing or even looking at your content, it's good enough as well. So I would say CTR.
Okay, perfect. What's the biggest budgeting mistake you've ever made and live to tell the tale?
Okay, here goes another one. I'm being diplomatic.
All right, 2 down, 4 more to go. All right. What's the most ridiculous trend you've ever promoted? You can tell me that.
I don't know if it's a trend, but the Coldplay concert mishap that had happened. So Styly took its take on it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
It was somewhere along the lines of, me getting caught with my Styly order or something like that.
Oh, wow. How did it go for you?
It was actually, I was a bit apprehensive initially because the team was discussing, should we do it, should we not do it? But then we were like, let's just do it, And it got quite a bit of engagement. So it actually turned out good.
All right, last one. Have you ever looked at a successful campaign and thought, this worked, but for all the wrong reasons?
Honestly, I can't think of anything, so I will take a shot here.
Vishaka, this has been such an awesome chat. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and insights with our viewers today. But this is something that I really want to end this conversation with. There's a girl somewhere, a young woman somewhere who's listening to this or watching this, who really works very hard, who shows up at work every day. But she also has these moments where she goes into this thought process, am I being too slow into something? Am I like overthinking? Um, or am I missing something? Now, if you were to meet her or rather have a chat with her, not as a leader or a title, but someone who's also faced uncertainty before, what would you like to tell her?
That's so beautiful, Gitanjali. Like, I'm just thinking of myself some time back, and really, I would just say that don't second guess yourself. Like, you have something to say, you should say it. You feel something, you feel a certain way, you should, express that. And at the end of the day, you're making yourself proud, and there's no other benchmark that you're sort of trying to hit, right? You're basically standing there and looking back at an older version of yourself and seeing how far I've come along. And I think that's what you should focus on, and not think of, validation from others.
Absolutely. This is such an inspiring answer. And I think it really highlights how women in marketing are now breaking barriers, they're shaping trends, and really making a big change in the industry today.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Gitanjali.
Thank you for being here, Vishaka. And to everyone listening, keep shining, keep growing, and never stop believing in your own power. This is me signing off at the Marketing Bites. See you on the next one. Plug in, power up, press play. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share because you don't want to miss an episode.